with Sienna, the web series where I use IMDb to discover and talk about all different types of movies and TV shows, and how the people in front of and behind the camera not only make it all possible, but are somehow all interconnected. I talk directly with the talent about their backstories and experiences on and off set, and what they're up to today. On my last episode, we talked about family ties. And Seymour, who was Meg Keaton on Family Ties, was also in the 1979 TV movie The Miracle Worker. Today, I have a two-part series. I'm going to be talking about The Miracle Worker and Little House on the Prairie. And I am so honored to announce my guest for this episode, Melissa Gilbert, who played Helen Keller on The Miracle Worker and Laura Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie. In addition to her roles on Little House on the Prairie and The Miracle Worker, Melissa's movie and TV credits include Diary of Anne Frank, Family Secrets, Splendor in the Grass, Stand by Your Man, Secrets and Lies, Hometown Christmas, When We Last Spoke, One Smart Fellow, and so many more. Melissa Gilbert is also a director, producer, and former president of the Screen Actors Guild. And now, without further ado, here's my interview with Melissa Gilbert. How did you get started acting for film and TV?
I come from a show business family, multi-generational show business family. My father's father was an Irish vaudevillian, and his mother was a French trapeze artist. And he learned the trapeze as a little boy and grew up in the Ringling Brothers Circus. He was sent away when he was like 8 to live with a family of trapeze artists in Buenos Aires. Oh, wow. And then, and he trained with them. And then he joined the Army Air Corps in World War II. And he got cast in a movie about the Army Air Corps because he was also kind of a performer. Yeah. And he got out of the Army. He became an actor and a singer and a dancer and a musician, and then later a stand-up comic. And so that was my dad. My mom was an actress in the 50s. She did a couple of B movies with Roger Corman. Not even the good Roger Corman movies, like bad Roger Corman movies. One of them was called Unwed Mother, and the other one was called Sorority Girl. You can imagine. But her dad, my grandfather, was a very famous comedy writer, and he created a show called The Honeymooners. And he wrote for Dean Martin. He wrote all the Dean Martin roasts. He wrote for Jerry Lewis. He wrote for Milton Berle. He wrote for Sid Caesar. He even wrote jokes for John F. Kennedy when he was president. Wow. Yeah, he would punch up his speeches with humor. And so when I was born and then adopted 24 hours later. By the way, my birth family are all singers and performers too. So it's in my genes and in the family that raised me. When I was about 2, my family was in this celebrity fashion show in Hawaii. My dad was playing a gig there. And so it was a celebrity and family fashion show. And so we were supposed to walk down this thing and turn and walk backstage. And so I did with my mom and my dad. And then they walked backstage and they were talking and they looked down and they realized I wasn't there. And they heard the audience cheering and applauding. And so they looked out. I was alone. I'd walked out down the whole ramp by myself and I was singing and dancing and blowing them kisses. My dad turned to my mom and said, uh-oh. And then people would say to my mom and dad all the time, she should be in commercials. She should be in commercials with those teeth and those freckles. And so my mom took me to meet an agent and they signed me like that. I have no memory of this. I was 2. Yeah. And I did my first commercial when I was 2 for Carter's Baby Clothes. And it just started from there. Wow,
that's a great story. It's all of your family from different ways.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's a very funny family. I think my family is just a bunch of carnies, really.
And how you read the Little House on the Prairie books before the show came your way?
I was in 4th grade, so I'm sure you read Little House on the Prairie. How old are you? You're 12, right?
Yeah, I'm in 7th grade. I'm 12.
Okay. So in like 3rd, 4th grade, you must have read Little House in the Big Woods or Little House on the Prairie or something.
I'm pretty sure I read, if not the whole book, some of the first book. And I was
I saw it at the bookstore the other day, and I told my mom I should probably get that soon because I just started watching the show too, to prepare for this interview. And the other night and last night it was funny because I was like, while I was like getting my bed ready, I had my laptop open. I was like glancing at the screen, watching it while I was getting everything ready for bed. And then this morning I took my laptop and I started watching it, and it's really good. I really liked it.
I'm so glad. Thank you for that. Thank you. I did read the books I read the first book. I read Little House in the Big Woods and Little House on the Prairie in like 3rd and 4th grade. They were assignments. And that's right about the time that they started looking for Laura for or casting the whole show. And so I had it was pretty fresh in my brain pan at that point, because I'd read and loved them. And there was, there's 9 books. So I knew that there was more reading ahead of me. And at that point, as an actor, my mom, who was really mostly in charge, my mom had decided that she only really wanted me to do commercials. And I did a ton of commercials. Ton. Crest toothpaste, daddy, I only have 1 cavity, and Clorox and mustard and turkey and you name it. I sold it. And my mom really only wanted me to do those because it was only a day or 2 out of school. It meant that I could just still be a kid, but I could do this thing that I really enjoyed, and I was making money for college. And then Little House on the Prairie came along, and she'd loved the books when she was little. And I basically just begged and cajoled and pleaded and said, please, 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 please. And she kind of knew, she had a feeling that there was kind of nobody else she wanted to see play Laura Ingalls Wilder. So I went on the big giant audition with, hundreds of thousands of girls from all over the country. And it gradually just whittled down to screen test day. And it was just me, and Michael Landon picked me.
Wow, that's so amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's a combination of factors that a lot of people in my profession forget. It's a combination of luck, timing, the right look to fit in with the family, and ability. So it all lined up. The stars lined up perfectly.
Yeah, I do auditions. I have an agent too, and I do acting. And I've been on like commercial auditions and TV show auditions, and there's always like there's been times when there's like the whole hallway and like down the staircase is filled with just thousands of people auditioning for the roles.
How do you handle when you don't get a role? How do you feel, and how do you deal with that?
Over time, I think I feel that like good. Like, I mean, I realize there's obviously thousands of people, like you said, auditioning for it. And I just keep trying, and my acting coach helps me especially when I have like every once in a while those like big movie and TV show things that come my way. I just get coaching from my acting coach, and she has really helped me a lot. I started when I was 8. I started in 3rd grade, and I always loved acting. So that's just what keeps me going, I guess, too.
Awesome. Have you done plays in school yet?
This is actually the first year I'm allowed to do the play in school. So yeah, I will. And it's usually around springtime that they'll or January, they start to audition, like the second to last month of school, we do it. So I'm gonna audition this year for that. Awesome. Yeah.
Good for you. Good for you.
Mm-hmm, definitely. And were you excited about the role, or were you nervous about the role when you found out that you got it?
I was excited I got it because this is so silly, but this is what I remember. When I was little, my brother also was an actor, and he was on Little House on the Prairie. He played Nellie Olson's brother, Willie. So as you watch the show, you'll see my brother, Jonathan.
Yeah.
But both went on auditions and stuff together. And my mom would reward us. If we got a call back, she'd give us a quarter. And if we got the job, we got $1 towards our allowance. Funny, because then there was also, the actual real money we were getting paid, which is getting put into trust for when we turned 18. So I was just really excited because I was going to get $1. And I knew that, it was going to be fun, and that I was going to have this incredible adventure ahead. I did not realize how much fun and how big an adventure it was going to be. But for a child to get cast on a show where, I got to wear authentic high button boots and pantaloons and petticoats and dress up in those clothes. And then there were animals everywhere. There were cows and baby cows and horses and the dog. And then people brought their kids to the set. So we traveled, like the crew all came with their families. So there were hundreds of kids to play with. And then the kids on the show. And then there was the twins who played baby Carrie, who were babies. So I got to hang out with these babies all day long. Not to mention also getting to act with some incredibly talented adult actors around me who treated me cautiously like they would a kid, but also when we were working, I got to be their peer, which is a really unusual place to be for a child, but for me was so fulfilling and so much fun. I think if I knew what was ahead, I would have been way nervous, but I was so relaxed about the whole audition process because it didn't even occur to me, that it was going to be that big a deal.
Yeah, definitely. It sounds like a lot of fun. And I love the seeing like this, it seems like so much fun to just like live on like a country and like the town and like with the like candy store and the little school. It just seems like so much fun just to like kind of live in two different worlds.
Yeah. That was a really fun part of it because then, when it would get to be too hot when we were out on the ranch or it was, miserable, we'd get to go home and we'd stop at 7-Eleven and have a Slurpee. So we did normal kid stuff around all of that other stuff, which was really fun. You just brought back a memory of for me too. We, at the Mercantile, where they had the jars of candy at the store, they had these big bins filled with beans. There was one with pinto beans. There was one with kidney beans. There was one with black-eyed peas. And it was just part of the set dressing. But we used to, the kids, Michael Landon taught us how to do this. We would put beans up our nose and then we'd put one in one nostril and then close it and then shoot beans together through our noses.
That's so funny.
Yeah. We were working, but we were also having a ton of fun.
Yes, definitely. And were you homeschooled during the years you filmed?
I wasn't homeschooled. I was enrolled in a private school in Los Angeles where I grew up. And it's still there. It's called the Buckley School. And it's a college prep school that starts in nursery and goes all the way through 12th grade. And so I was already there and I'd been there for years and years and years. And so I corresponded my work with my regular class. So my teachers would gather all of my assignments together and my mom or someone would pick them up. And then I had a teacher on the set, Mrs. Veneer, who I adored, who took me through all of my schooling, all the way through high school, 4 years of high school French, all the maths, all the sciences. I even dissected a frog on the set. I was very lucky that the school was willing to do that and to help. So I graduated, I graduated from a really tough school with a really high grade point average, and I had applied to colleges pre-med, and I was going to be a doctor, and I got accepted to a couple of them. So, that's any indication. I got a really good education, and legally, so I'm sure you've heard about this, but in case you haven't, legally, to be a working child actor, if you're under 18, the law is that you can only be on the set 8 hours a day. And during the school year, 3 hours of that is school. 1 hour of your day is lunch. So you're really only acting for about 4 hours a day. Yeah. And one of the things that you can do too, which we used to do, is if I had a day off, I would come in and I would do like 6 or 7 hours of school and bank extra hours. So on days when they needed me to act more, I wouldn't have to do the full 3 hours of school. I could do 2. So I generally was always ahead of my class. The only thing I didn't get when I was doing set school was lectures.
Yeah.
And then during our hiatus, when we would go on break from Little House on the Prairie, I'd go back to regular school.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Wow. That's a lot of switching.
It's a lot of switching. And for me, it was even more complicated because I had the buckest buck teeth that any Bucky Beaver face person ever had in their whole lives. I was born with an overbite, but I also sucked my thumb for a really long time. And I could literally bite down and fit my thumb between my bottom and my top teeth. They stuck out that far.
Oh my God.
And they didn't have braces in the 1800s. So whenever we were on hiatus, I had to get like super braces. So when I went back to regular school, with braces, rubber bands, a neck gear, like all the terrible, uncomfortable, like it wasn't hard enough that I wasn't there, but then I'd go back with just a metal head.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
was not the most popular.
And so many of the themes of Little House, when I was watching it, still apply today, like how Nellie is bullying you and your sister on the show, and how like your parents say on the show, like Michael Landon, like how you guys have to get along with each other. You have to just kind of like ride it out. Are you surprised that those themes from the show still take place in the 1800s, or like that take place in the 1800s, are still relevant today? People still think about them?
I think the core values, by the way, this is an amazing question.
Thank you.
Core values of the show, which are the values of community, of love, acceptance, understanding, compassion, like all the things that drive us, that drive the better angels of our nature, are still relevant and still important. It's the basic tenets of humanity. If you want to be a true humanitarian and a human being on this planet, you have to love other people. You have to be accepting of them, regardless of what gender they are, what color they are, what their sexual preference is, what school they went to, what country they're from, what language they speak, what shoes they wear. None of it should matter. And
Yeah.
that was like all of the underlying themes of Little House. What's amazed me about Little House happened last year, particularly during lockdown and during the racial reckoning that the country was going through.
Mm-hmm.
We did a lot of stories about prejudice and racism and anti-Semitism and anti-Native sentiment in regards to Native Americans. And last year, there was one episode that people watched that really resonated for them. And it was an episode called The Wisdom of Solomon. It's about a young boy played by Todd Bridges, who was on a show called I Can See It in My Mind's Eye. Different Strokes. Thank you.
I know Different Strokes. Yeah, I've watched that.
Todd's the older brother, but he was a little boy, and he played a young boy who ran away from his family and came to our house because he didn't want to grow up to be like his father, who was a freed slave. And he came to our house and then offered to be our servant to work in exchange for schooling. He wanted to go to school so that he could not be a farmer, so he could grow up to be a man of substance. The one scene that really got everybody during this last time of social unrest in the country was a scene between Todd Bridges and Michael Landon, where Todd says to Michael Landon, would you rather be Black and live to be 100 or be white and live to be 50?
Mm-hmm.
Michael Landon has no answer. It's such an emotional question and so impossible. He has no answer for the kid. And people started posting that clip all over the place and writing, things like, wow, Little House on the Prairie was so woke. That's crazy. And we did a lot of stories like that really had meaning for people. We did stories in our first season about a Civil War veteran coming home after the war addicted to morphine, which was happening to our troops were coming home from Vietnam at that time. A lot of them addicted to heroin. And so this was our way of telling that story as well and opening people's eyes to it. And so we did a lot of hard-hitting stuff that people didn't really realize we were doing.
What was the most challenging episode you can remember filming?
I think there were a couple late in the show. There was actually, we did 3 movies after the show was canceled, 3 2-hour movies. And the last one was the one where we blew everything up, which you'll see when you're done with the whole series.
Yeah.
The one we did called Bless All the Dear, no, not Bless All the Dear Children. Maybe it was, I don't remember, but it was a story about Laura and her husband Almanzo, which is the correct pronunciation. We called him Almanzo on our show, but it's actually Almanzo. And their daughter gets kidnapped and they have to go find their daughter. We shot it in Old Tucson. And I just, honestly, personally, my head wasn't in the game for that episode. I was only 19, 18, 19. I had been married off on the show at 15 to someone who was 10 years older than me. So that was uncomfortable enough too. And then we had this child and I didn't have kids and I didn't have a lot of reference points.
Yeah.
And just also it was hot and I was uncomfortable and I kind of didn't want to be there. And that was the biggest struggle I had. And you can see it. My performance is really lackluster. You could really see me kind of walking through it, which is not a fun admission for an actor, but I had a moment of weakness.
Yeah, everybody has that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And do you have any favorite stories from working on the set? And what was it like growing up on the show? Because you really like your whole teenage / like tween life, you were on the show, kind of living there.
Yeah, absolutely. I was there for 10 years of my life. I was 9 when it started and I was 19 when it ended. And so much of my life happened around those people, the cast and the crew.
Yeah.
And we were like a really giant dysfunctional family, all of us. And it was more often an incredible experience than not. I have very few memories of things that were difficult or painful or frustrating or emotionally wrenching in any way, shape, or form. Almost all of my memories of being on that set are happy ones. And the stories, I mean, I have so many stories you can imagine, but one of my favorite stories is from the pilot episode, the pilot movie. There's a scene that didn't get put in there. There's a scene where Pa goes out hunting and he gets chased by a pack of wolves.
I saw that.
Okay, so you did see that episode. Well, he comes back and he actually has a couple of rabbits. And he walks in and in the scene, he hands these rabbits to me. It's like a thing of rabbits with their feet tied together, dead, upside down. And then I am supposed to put the rabbits on the table next to me and deliver a line. And, but they knew that if they told me that the rabbits were dead, I would be very upset because I was so crazy about animals.
Yeah, same.
Everyone knew that Michael Lennon was going to do this. So rather than upset me, he said, now listen, when I hand you the rabbits, you have to be very quiet because we hypnotize them and they're sleeping. So he came in and he handed me the rabbits and he walked away and I set the rabbits down on the table and I was looking at him and they slipped off the table and they landed on the ground with a huge thud and they didn't move. And everybody was really quiet because they thought, oh, now the jig is up. She's going to start crying. And I looked down at the rabbits and I looked over off camera at him and I said, wow, they sure sleep tight, don't they? And the best part of that story is that he didn't tell me the truth about that until I saw him at his daughter Leslie's wedding when I was almost 30 years old. He said, I have a confession. I have to tell you a story. He told me the story.
Oh, wow. That's so funny.
Is that funny?
Yeah, definitely.
I don't know what's funnier, the fact that I believe that you can hypnotize rabbits or the fact that they did that.
Hope you're all enjoying the interview. Be sure to tune in for part 2 of this episode with more of Melissa Gilbert. See you then!